Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Louise Watt. In early July, the British Labour Party won a landslide victory in the British general elections. Their leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is already in office. He's the country's first Labour Prime Minister in 14 years. What will his government's policy towards China be? And with the U.S. election coming up, who would a Labour government prefer to work with in Washington? Could Sir Keir's diplomatic ability be put to the test with balancing both China and U.S. relations? To discuss this and more, we have with us today Leonard Chao, National Tsinghua University Adjunct Professor and former Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office in the U.S., Political Head and Congressional Division Director, Tsai Jung-hsiang, National Chung-Cheng University Professor of Political Science, and Marcin Jerzewski, Taiwan Office Head, European Values Centre for Security Policy. A very warm welcome to you all, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, David Cameron's golden era in Chinese relations may seem like a distant memory now. Successive Conservative governments have grown warier of China. Rishi Sunak himself called China an epoch-defining and systemic challenge. Now, Marcin, you actually went to London earlier this year to talk to Labour folks about China and Taiwan. What were they telling you about how they will approach China?
The new Labour government is trying to describe its new approach towards China and in general its approach in foreign policy as a 3C strategy where it challenges, competes and cooperates where possible. However, in reality, I think that we can bring a little bit more nuance with more of an alphabet soup to this understanding. So I think that what we are looking at is more of a CWG strategy. W representing welfare, G representing growth, and C representing cooperation, but more broadly with other partners. So Labour has run on a platform that is very strongly related to economic growth while maintaining welfare of everyday Britons and also ushering a new era of global Britain that realistically evaluates its partnerships. Therefore, the China challenge is precisely this CWG alphabet soup. UK will need to align its approach to China with other partners, including allies in the Indo-Pacific. AUKUS will remain an important focus in London's foreign policy outreach. Also, the new Labour government promises to usher in a new era of a return to Europe. And the European Union follows a similar trifecta when approaching China, calling it a partner, rival, and competitor. At the same time, challenging China might come with backlash. We are already seeing it in the European Union with China's efforts to retaliate for investigations into illegal subsidies or subsidies for electric vehicles that are distorting the equal playing field. Given the economic entanglement between London and Beijing, this might have economic implications for Britons who are expecting more economic growth.
Well, let's go back to that point about economic growth and let's dig into that further. So, Professor Tsai, Sir Keir has said that, yes, he wants economic growth for Britain. And he also wants to reduce dependency on China, particularly trade and technology. Now, how do you assess the UK's need for the Chinese market, particularly post-Brexit?
Yeah, the thing is that China is a very, very significant market for the UK now, especially luxury cars, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Aston Martin, and also Range Rover, that kind of stuff. And also, the UK is very good at financial services, that kind of thing. So for China, the thing is that the China market is so big, right? It can offer a lot of great opportunities, especially for British business to expand globally after the post-Brexit era. So this is very, very important. But China can do something. If the UK try to impose tariff on electric cars, that kind of thing, and China can do an eye for an eye. So maybe they try to make a change of the Tory party, right? Before it was more accommodating, it was more appeasement to China. Now the Labour Party would like to have a change. They are auditing the China policy now. But the thing is that they're going to pursue the Goldilocks principles, not too warm, not too cold. That's my assessment.
I like that, the Goldilocks principles. Okay. Now, Sir Keir Starmer was lucky enough to win an election just before NATO happened, and then he could go to NATO, the summit over there in the US, and he could hobnob with President Biden and other leaders. So it was a great opportunity for him to meet them. And this summit was notable because the leaders named China and its military posture as a threat to NATO interests and global stability. The reason for that was because of China's glowing relationship with Russia. Now, are we to take from that statement on China that Starmer is willing to confront China? What do you think, Professor Zhao?
Well, okay, everybody, is talking about the U.S. election these days, Biden and Trump, But I think that the
not anymore.
not anymore. Yeah.
Harris. Yeah.
Well, okay. Let me replace Biden with Harris. All right. In her Chinese name, He Jinli. Well, okay. Let's talking about the U.S. China policy. I don't know if, of course, confrontation is one of them, but I have to point out that as opposed to the 3 C's policies by the British Labour government mentioned earlier, I'd like to maybe introduce that 4 C's, which can more comprehensively describe the U.S. China policies. The U.S. China policy, I see that can be fourfold, which I translate into the 4 C's, namely, first, confrontation, of course, no doubt about it, and second is a compromise. The United States, if you look at their foreign policy history, particularly during the Cold War era, last century, you can find a lot of proofs about a U.S. compromise when they fail to confront. So that's second C. And third C is what? Cooperation. The U.S. is still very enthusiastically trying to work with China on the climate change issue and also North Korean security issue. So that's the third C. And the fourth C, I think it's one of the most important ones, is that the communication. So to wrap up, 4 C's are confrontation and compromise, cooperation, and communication, which can better describe what the U.S. policies with regard to China is all about. So I think in this context, even Trump, provided that he got reelected, okay? I'd like to introduce another concept that, there's a 3 kind of a transitional, scenario, okay? Or similar to that so-called, the paradigm shift. First, from outsider into insider. Trump from outsider, when he was outsider, he can say whatever, on his mind. But when he become an insider, he had to be careful. And then the sort of outsider into insider. And second transition is from the so-called policy deal maker into a policy maker. Trump himself is a good deal maker. He may deal with everyone, okay? But when he becomes a president of the superpower in the world, he has to learn to work with the community people, the establishment in Washington, to become a good policy maker. Mm-hmm. Because the people, not only in America, but in the entire world, will rely on him. So that's the second, the transition. And the third transition is that let's say that the policy designer into a policy executor. So had to take back whatever some of the mischievous or some of the rough words he has been known for uttering, he had to take them back to become a good policymaker. So in this regard, I don't think that Trump can easily get away from the 4Cs policy transition. He had to work with his staff and the White House and State Department. So in this context, I think the U.S. policy with China, that remains to be seen. I don't think, I take a dim view that Trump will repeat what he did during his first term as a president. There must be certain transaction, certain transformation, and certain some utterance. And then the other one.
Let's just say, so today we've started off talking about the Labour Party's 3 Cs. We've turned it into CWG, and now we've turned it into the 4 Cs. But let's just stop there for a moment and just think about. Yes, so we're thinking about now who's going to be in the White House, next year. And I'm wondering, who would the Labour government most like to see?
Mr. Starmer already had an early call with Donald Trump right after the incident, the shooting, the assassination attempt. Okay, so
and what do you make of that? I mean, a lot of leaders did. Apparently, according to Trump, she wrote him a beautiful letter as well after the assassination attempt.
But the new PM, Starmer, he has uttered, his words in the NATO summit in Washington last week. He said that we have to evaluate the new government of the Labour Party have to reevaluate. Evaluate the current bilateral relations between the UK and China, so that to improve the UK's ability of what to understand and respond to the challenges and opportunities brought by China. He was not using the word such as a threat or some deadly threat. So I think it's a very subtle change. Challenges and opportunities. That's why he kind to to define the nature of the implication China has brought to UK.
Okay, challenges and opportunities. And of course, the UK has this so-called special relationship with the United States. So however the United States deals with China, are we expected to think that the UK will go along with that? Marcin, how do you see this?
Among the CWGs, the C stands for cooperation, and I believe that one of the core tenets of progressive realism, which is supposed to be the new guiding principle of Labour's foreign policy, is the idea that Britain is no longer anything close to a hegemon, and therefore it needs to actively collaborate with like-minded partners in order to strengthen and sustain its position in global power relations. This means that as Britain reevaluates its approach to China in the first 100 days as promised before the elections, it will need to do so with an understanding of how its partners, for example, the U.S., with whom it shares a special relationship, will do so as well. Therefore, I think that the rational thing for the Labour government to do, and there is a realization that it is necessary, is to work with whoever inhabits the White House from 2025 onwards. At the same time, I believe that a democratic president would be simply less of a wild card. With Trump in the White House, we could expect any response to a potential Taiwan contingency or other form of escalation of China's projection of its power in the Indo-Pacific region, ranging from complete inaction, underpinned by a more inward-looking focus of White House policy and distribution of resources, to a very confrontational, literally or figuratively, nuclear response. Therefore, Democratic presidency, considering that Trump is the Republican nominee, would probably make the calculus a little more predictable and easier to solve.
Professor Tsai, how do you see this? Because both Trump and Biden have had a frosty relationship with Beijing. Biden now not standing. We don't know if it will be Kamala Harris, but if it is, she has been his vice president. Now, is it more likely that one or the other would lead to more serious confrontations with Beijing?
Yeah, but somebody say it's like you choose the lesser of two evils, right? Even Trump or Harris, I think they are going to pursue more confrontational approach, especially to China, because for Biden, he had a technology war with China, and for Trump, he used to have a trade war with China. So both of them, both of the parties, they are much tougher than before, okay? And also for UK, because they have special relationship across the bond. So it's like they are gonna ally with the United States, especially US is the biggest economy in the world. So if China retaliates the UK about the trade, UK can diversify its access to the American market. So I think it's very important for UK to have more relationship in terms of trade agreements, that kind of thing, with the new US administration. I don't think UK will choose sides now because it's not smart to do that.
Do they have to choose sides? Is there a way of balancing them both?
Maybe they try to, okay. The thing is that you are not gonna know who is gonna win the election. It's hard to predict. You don't have a crystal ball now, right? So the better thing to do is try to wait and see. It's not over until the soprano sings. Yeah.
Let's turn to the issue of Taiwan now. The UK, like the United States, like Japan, like many of their allies, have spoken of the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Now, Professor Chao, as Taiwan increasingly faces military pressure from China, how do you assess British support under this new Labour government for Taiwan?
Well, the UK and Taiwan have always kept a very good relationship between them over the past few years. I think the British office in Taipei, they had done a very good job, the credit. And then about the British support, well, of course, the British, the UK has joined, the United States alongside such countries as Canada, Australia, or even France, sending some of the warships, frigates, for the voyages through the Taiwan Strait over the past few years, namely 2019, 2021, and 2024. These three kind of voyages, it's unusual, non-US vessels navigated through the Taiwan Strait. For this kind of three, the UK voyages they made, they always keep them very low profile, better, silent. But they don't want to, certainly, obviously, that they don't want to, stir up some of the antagonism, retaliation from China. So I think they cannot afford to, to infuriate China. They have to try to keep a very good, the current close relationship between them. But still, and the UK support of Taiwan is not limited to the military or some of the security side, but about the future Chinese threat to the Taiwan Strait. I think UK, the primary concern is rather on the economic security, not a military one. Because economic security, I think more specifically, is a semiconductor, chips-related security.
Which the whole world relies on.
That's right. So the UK is not exceptional. And they're concerned about because if they want to join the US, to come up with some of the economic sanction against China, suppose that happen. Unfortunately, can they afford to take the cost, to bear the cost at the UK? Because Taiwan is different from Ukraine, and also the China is not the same as Russia. So the UK has always tried to. They have to keep them in mind, to calculate, the cost and benefit. So for their reaction, I think that some of the strong support. It's not likely to happen from the UK. They like to come up with some of the voice, support, symbolic, support. But because given the geographical distance and given some of the logistic support, difficulties from between London and the Taiwan Strait, it's not likely to be a very strong or very tangible support, like for military force. But I think other than that, the UK will continue their friendship and standing by the Taiwan side in many regards.
Okay, so Professor Zhao doesn't think there will be much strong
Depending
military
on,
support.
That's depending on how would you interpret and define the word strong.
Well, if a conflict breaks out, for example.
Yeah, I think in some of the international, international arena, international conference, the UK, without any doubt, they will come up with a very, strong and a very serious, our condemnation for China. Take one thing, for example. Just about 2 months ago, the UK joined the AIT and the Canadian CTOT. They come up with a joint announcement to the public that they like to support Taiwan's, meaningful participation in the work of WHO.
Mm-hmm.
I think
they've said that before as well,
right.
and many countries
Yeah.
do. And I do feel there is more awareness within London, within the UK as a whole, of Taiwan and the threats that it's facing. And Marcin, what were the Labour folks saying to you on Taiwan? Was there a sense that they may have to step up in the future to help Taiwan against China?
Taiwan has many friends within the British Labour Party, and the Labour politicians have put their money where their mouth is by institutionalizing this friendship, having established the Labour Friends of Taiwan group in 2023. Earlier this year, after the January parliamentary and presidential elections in Taiwan and before the general elections in the UK, Labour Friends of Taiwan also sent a delegation to the country to express their support for continuing the expansion of relations between the UK and Taiwan. And at the time, they met, among others, with now former President Dr. Tsai Jung-hsiang. I believe that these exchanges are very meaningful and demonstrate the willingness within the party to engage with Taiwan very proactively. Also, the ongoing preparations for the audit of the UK's relations with China are strongly underpinned through a China skeptic intellectual basis in London. So, among others, the China Strategic Risks Institute is one of the main bodies behind analyses that are informing the preparations for this audit, and it is an organization that is actively advocating for building closer ties with Taiwan. So this link between the new Labour establishment and the think tanks that are supporting their intellectual and policy work is very clear and allows me to be cautiously optimistic. Also, something that Labour emphasizes, again, in its progressive realism approach is that there will be a strong normative underpinning to the UK's effort to sustain its global posture. And here, Taiwan has two areas where it can actively contribute. The first one is the like-mindedness. So Taiwan's strong human rights record, although there are still areas to improve, will definitely be attractive to Labour, especially as they point to the deteriorating human rights situation in Hong Kong, a place strongly connected to the UK, given the colonial history of the city. And the second one is connected to climate change. Climate is at the very forefront of Labour government's new policy, including foreign policy, and Taiwan, being one of the first countries in Asia, but also globally, to put net zero commitments into legislation, presents itself as a valued partner to the Labour government in this regard.
And I wonder, what about on a personal level? Because it's interesting, isn't it, that Sir Keir Starmer, he actually came to Taiwan. He came in 2016 and he came in 2018 when he was a member of parliament, long before anyone thought he would be leader. And he came precisely to lobby the Taiwan government on abolishing the death penalty. That's an issue close to his heart. So, Professor Tsai, how do you think those experiences of his visits to Taiwan previously might impact his policy on Taiwan?
Yeah, he did visit Taiwan twice, but just for human rights issues, especially for capital punishment, because he tried to say maybe Taiwan still have that kind of problem. So as an international lawyer, he was concerned about this kind of issue. But after he became the prime minister, I know he has a personal connection. He came to Taiwan, but it will help him understand what's going on about Taiwan's trade. Of course, we can get a win of this because he tried to audit the China policy, and I think the Labour is not going to turn a blind eye when Taiwan has a conflict with China. That's the one thing I know. It's very, very important. Maybe no military involvement directly, but of course, UK will say you should resolve this kind of problem peacefully. Okay, this is very, very important.
Engaging with the civil society is an extremely important channel for the UK or any country to expand informal, albeit substantial, relations with Taiwan. And the UK has already made strides under the previous government to do so by establishing a Taiwan office of the government-linked Westminster Foundation for Democracy. But in any case, the UK and member states of the European Union, despite Brexit, have very synergistic objectives in the Taiwan Strait. It is to maintain peace and stability. And Taiwan's democratic processes and institutions are the best safeguard of this. But we wouldn't have such robust democratic institutions and processes in Taiwan if it weren't for the civil society, including organizations that actively work as watchdogs to the government and advocate for similar human rights change that Sir Keir has previously advocated for. Therefore, I think that it's very promising that he has this history of engagement with the Taiwanese civil society, and this offers plenty of opportunities for the UK to engage on, not only because of normative synergies, but because it is good, it is beneficial to the realization of British foreign policy objectives in the region.
I really appreciate your contributions, and especially we've certainly gone through a lot of alphabet soup today. But if you've enjoyed watching this, please do follow us on YouTube and click to subscribe. And we hope to see you again very soon. Stay safe. Bye-bye.